Hello and welcome to the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. It is my absolute honor to have you here with us today for our very first episode of the podcast, as well as having such an incredible guest here with us for this inaugural episode of the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. My name is Brad Tabke, and I am the host of the podcast. I am the founder of MinnesotaGardening.com, and therefore Minnesota Gardening Podcast is here to help share a lot of great information with you as a Minnesota gardening enthusiast. So we'd love for you to share the podcast with folks. Make sure to subscribe and follow, because we will have a new episode available every single Tuesday. So right now we have 3 full episodes that are all released today on October 5th, 2021, and then there will be a new episode every week. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get that, because we are going to be sharing and talking with guests with a lot of timely information that is accessible as well as really important to Minnesota gardeners. And so we've got episodes on garlic planting coming up so that you will want to have that before you have to plant your garlic. And so make sure to be listening to the episodes as they are coming out, and I know that you will enjoy them. So without any further ado, we are going to get started with this first podcast. And Paul Douglas is a meteorologist, he's an entrepreneur, and has a really long bio, and he is just an amazing guy focusing on climate change. There are a lot of links and different information we share. You can find those all in the show notes for this episode at minnesotagardening.com/1. And so that's the number 1, minnesotagardening.com/1. And without any further ado, here is our interview with meteorologist and entrepreneur Paul Douglas. All right, today for the first episode of the podcast, I am thrilled to have such an incredible guest with us here today. You can read him in the Star Tribune. You can hear him on WCCO radio. We have the incredible weather personality, and I think serial entrepreneur is a good way to say it. Paul Douglas is here with us today to chat with us about climate change. Paul, thank you so much for being with us here on the podcast.
It's great to be with you, Brad, and thank you for the nice introduction. I'm going to give you an extra $5.
I think as I was researching and looking at, I could have made that bio like 20 pages long. You've done a lot of incredible things, and especially recently have been doing a lot to educate and share about climate change and what's going on in not just locally in the world, but and locally in the nation, but also around the world. And so I just appreciate everything you're doing there. And I wanted to start, Paul, with back on August 9th, there was a new report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they said in this report that many of the changes observed in the climate are unprecedented in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And some of the changes already set in motion, such as continued sea level rise, are irreversible over hundreds to thousands of years. And they have a lot of other scary quotes in this report that they just released. But how does this affect what's going on climate change wise in Minnesota and the upper Midwest?
Well, it's a loaded question, and thank you, Brad, for teeing this up. The long and short of it, I think our grandkids are going to be pissed. I think at some point it's already happening, a reckoning. What did you know when, and what did you do? Did you sit on your hands? Did you kick the can down the road, or were you part of the inevitable solution? And I think we're at that inflection point. For Minnesota, look, the warming is actually in line with what the climate models, a consensus of climate models, were predicting 30, 40 years ago. Climate scientists that I know are not surprised by the rate of warming. We're at about 2 degrees. That's a global average. Here in Minnesota, the warming is closer to 3, 4, even 5 degrees up north. And most of that warming is in the winter and early spring. We don't see the warming signal as much yet in the summer, although summers are consistently more humid, higher dew points, warmer nighttime lows. That is certainly going to have an impact on agriculture and on gardening. The fact that there's just more water in the air, and it's basic physics. You warm up the air can hold more water vapor. Already the air over Minnesota holds an average of 6, 7, 8% more water than it did for your grandparents. And that has implications. When it rains harder, consistently. We don't get the gentle rains as often as we did 50, 60, 100 years ago. So we're seeing more of these mega rain events. The Minnesota DNR tracks these since 1858, since we became a state, and they estimate we've seen about 16 of these mega rainfall events since 1858. Half of those, 8 of those, have occurred since the turn of the century, since 2000. So we are consistently seeing more flooding rains where these mega rains cover multiple counties, at least 6 inches of rain, sometimes 8, 10 inches of rain. And they tend to be more frequent in May and June. And that's one of the signals that we're seeing. The springs, not every spring, but most springs are trending wetter. Some springs a lot wetter. And then we kind of go off a cliff. By late summer, things dry out. Winter precipitation, increasingly a mixed bag. You can't be assured that even in January you're going to get all snow. It may be a mix of snow and ice and rain. So it's a long laundry list of implications for Minnesota. Growing seasons are longer. That is not a theory. That is our new reality. The period when we're not experiencing freezing temperatures or frosty temperatures is consistently longer statewide. And that's an opportunity. It's also a threat in terms of how we manage pesticides and herbicides. So a lot of things in play, Brad.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we look at this summer, which was the meteorological summer, was recently dubbed the hottest summer on measured record in the state of Minnesota. And so that are we seeing that throughout the United States? Is it varied across, that some places are changing in a different way? Or is it basically across the board that people are seeing things hotter and more extreme types of weather?
The extremes that have been with us since the dawn of creation are trending more extreme. It's not your imagination. I mean, the data supports that. The wets are wetter. The dries are drier, and Minnesota is sort of on the edge of the area that is expected to experience perpetual drought. The western U.S. already in the midst of a natural mega drought, which spans 1,200 years. And the thing about a warming climate is that it turns up the dial, turns up the volume, if you will, on these extremes. And that's one of the things that we seem to be witnessing with the hydrological cycle, the water cycle. You warm things up a few degrees and you increase the amount of evaporation. So in terms of soil moisture, it's hard keeping soil in the moisture, especially July, August, September. And then because there's more water overhead, when it does rain, the rain is often falling harder. And much of that water that falls runs off. Instead of soaking into the soil where we need it, it runs off into streets and streams and rivers. It isn't captured. And so when people sometimes ask me, hey, Paul, what's a good profession for my daughter or son to go into? Forget plastics. I remember Dustin Hoffman, the graduate back in the 1960s, out by the pool, the advice he got was plastics.
Right.
Today, it's water management. How do we cope in a world of too much water or not enough water? It seems we kind of ricochet between one extreme and the next. So managing water is going to be an increasing challenge in the 21st century. And even here in Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, I know it's more than that. I think, we feel like we have an overabundance of water, and we do. We've been blessed. But managing water is going to be more of a challenge, and it's going to require new techniques, new tools, new methodology, new products. What worked in the 1980s is not going to work in the 2020s and 2030s, just making sure that crops and plants and trees and shrubs and flowers get the water that they need to not only thrive, but going forward, survive.
Right. And we saw that especially to the tail end of this summer before we finally started to get a little rain here the last few weeks as we get into fall. And this summer, significant water shortages all across the state of Minnesota. There were major watering bans. There were major reductions requested in people being able to use water. And that really affects folks who are doing gardening and being able to keep things alive that are going. What can individual homeowners and people who have gardens and lawns, what can they do on an individual personal level to take this as granular as we can to help mitigate climate change?
Well, Brad, you hit the nail on the head. I think this is the summer, this is the year 2021 where climate change went from theory to reality for many Americans, even people that were on the fence. Yeah, I tell people, look, you don't believe the scientists, you don't believe the politicians, believe your own eyes. And look out the window, and what are you experiencing? And I remind people gently, don't look at your thermometer for evidence of warming. I mean, the warming signal is sort of a slow motion signal. Look to what is new in your yard, things that are growing in your yard that maybe weren't growing, thriving a generation ago. And new pests, new invasive species.
Right.
Thriving in this new, warmer world. So I think water management, I think there's going to be more emphasis than ever on irrigation systems and smart ways to conserve water. So, the moments that we have excessive water, how do we retain that water? How do we store that water? Save it for, a period of intense dry weather like we experienced this summer. So, and whether it's, a large corporate industrial size farming operation managing water, and I know more and more farmers that are installing drainage tiles, to be able to manage the runoff. So when we get these flooding events, that it doesn't take the topsoil with it. And I think to some extent, some of that technology will trickle down to the rest of us, to people who are avid gardeners, who want to make sure that they maintain not only proper soil moisture, but they retain the topsoil. So when we do get these incredible floods, especially May and June, those tend to be the wettest months, that we can retain not only our topsoil, but manage topsoil moisture. I think there will be new techniques to help even things out a little bit for everyone, not just the big, farming operations, but some of the smaller gardening operations where people want to know what's coming and how should I manage my yard to take advantage of the natural water that's going to fall from the sky and supplement that with additional irrigation opportunities. And what are some of the best practices where I can maintain soil moisture and keep the topsoil where it's needed when we do get these incredible biblical floods?
Right, exactly. And today, northern Minnesota is still, I was looking at the drought maps this morning, and even though good chunk of Minnesota got a lot of rain over the course of the last 2-3 weeks, as from when we're recording this in early September, northern Minnesota is still in a severe drought in a lot of areas, extreme drought, and experiencing fires and things like that. Do we see northern Minnesota changing differently than around the metro and southern Minnesota? I've read that they're more susceptible to climate change, the northern third of Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having a conversation with Will Steger, who has been very vocal about climate change, his experience in the Arctic, and he's up in Ely. And he said, Paul, there's stuff growing up here that never used to grow up here. I mean, we got black maples. The deciduous trees are spreading throughout the north woods of Minnesota. Traditionally, pine forests and evergreens, and now you've got these deciduous trees popping up and thriving because it is warming, and the rate of warming is greater in far northern Minnesota. Far northern latitudes are seeing more warming than tropical latitudes and southern latitudes. So yes, the changes are happening quickly, and there's a lot of debate and concern about whether, we can hang on to our north woods, traditional pine north woods, or whether what's happening in southern and even central Minnesota is going to continue to spread into the northern counties of the state. So there is concern, and it's weird, Brad. There are things that I never thought I'd see with the drought this summer, the worst since 1988. We had a lot of smoke, and these thick plumes of smoke not only are annoying for those of us that have to breathe that in, it can also have an impact on plant growth. If we get 20, 30, 40 days with bad air quality, the kind of air quality you would expect maybe in California and Nevada, it actually does impact the growth cycle as well, in that much of the sunlight that our plants need to thrive gets filtered out. And so all of these, I wouldn't call them black swans, but some of these unlikely symptoms of a warming climate can add up. They're cumulative. So not only do we have higher dew points, higher humidities, which can impact plant growth, but we also have more smoke now in the summer, especially since 2016. The amount of smoke overhead has increased rather dramatically, not just in Minnesota, but really nationwide. And so we're not really even sure the long-term implications. Can we still get the yields that we want, that we need, when 30, 40, 50 days out of the summer are filled with smoke? I'm optimistic that we're going to figure it out. It's going to require really an entrepreneurial approach to gardening and to ag, and to coming up with new ways to manage water, new ways to manage smoke, so that no matter what Mother Nature hurls at us, that we can still kind of keep the wheels on the bus. I'm confident we will, but there will be some growing pains along the way.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And so with that, what do you want, Paul, for people to understand? Like, what do you think that they don't really understand, or is a surprising thing about climate change and its effects here in Minnesota that you would really like people to know and have a good handle on?
I would say we're all going to be experimenting together to see what works in this new, warmer, more hyperactive weather environment that we're entering. We're there. I mean, it's no longer a, hey, no need to worry, it's 20, 30 years down the road, our kids will figure it out. No, we are having to figure it out. So I think some of it is a willingness to embrace change. And that's hard. I think as human beings, we are wired to resist change, not necessarily to embrace change, right?
Right.
We find out what works and we kind of stay in our lane and, hey, this is how I've been doing it all these years. This is the way it's done. Well, that's going to change. And you need to be open to those changes and open to failing and pivoting and failing forward and failing until you succeed. And you say, this is what it's going to take for me to grow the flowers, the plants that I want to be growing. I didn't have to do this in 1995 or 2000 or even 2005, but in order to get the results that I want, I have to do X, Y, and Z. Be open to X, Y, and Z. We can still have everything we want and need, but we're going to have to try new ways to get there.
Exactly. I could not, again, agree with that more. There are just so many things that are changing. And right now in the gardening world, like this summer, we had Japanese beetles, for example, that were the worst that many places in the state have seen. And their zone is spreading throughout the state of Minnesota. And we have the new phenomenon of jumping worms and a lot of different other pests that are just really difficult, that are a direct a direct result of our changing climate and where things are going. So, Paul, we are bumping up against the end, and I couldn't appreciate your time here more. And for the podcast, as we get this started here, we want to have a couple of just like quick fire questions for the end of the podcast. So
Okay.
if you will, I just got a couple quick answer gardening related questions for you. You ready for them?
Probably not, but yeah,
It'll
hit
be
me
soft.
with your
I
best
promise.
stuff. Okay.
All right. So related to Minnesota, what is your favorite place in Minnesota to visit?
Well, I'm biased. We have a 1950s era cabin on Pelican Lake, and that is our little slice of heaven. This summer with the drought, we had a lot more beach and a lot less water than we have in recent years. But we love going up to our cabin, and I mean, there's so many spots in the state that are breathtaking. I remind people we live in a resort. We live in a resort. And I don't take that for granted. I grew up on the East Coast and, found my way here when I was in my early 20s and discovered the magic that is Minnesota. And I mean, the North Shore is amazing. The North Woods are amazing. The prairies are amazing. We have so much variety in this state. And that's one of the things that attracted me to Minnesota. Wide open places, still a sense of openness. When I go east now, I get claustrophobic, and I come back to Minnesota, and I can take a deep cleansing breath and go, I'm home.
Beautiful.
And so but I think, all of us are called to be stewards in our own way. And all of us, I think, have a ministry and I hope an obligation to share our concerns about a rapidly changing climate and also to share best practices. Hey, this worked for me. I experimented and here's what works. And being open to friends and colleagues and strangers sharing best practices.
It's a beautiful thing about humans is that we can work together usually and get things figured out. I totally agree.
Yep.
Next question is what food grown in Minnesota is your favorite?
Sweet corn.
Beautiful.
Sweet corn. Sweet corn. It does not get any better than Minnesota sweet corn. So maybe I'm biased because I just had it and I've been eating it voraciously for the past few weeks. But
that's another thing that was impacted by climate change this summer. The drought was really hard on sweet corn.
Yeah, sweet corn. It's been tough for farmers. I mean, even during a regular year, it's tough for farmers. And farmers really are America's original entrepreneurs, right? They take risk every year. And the biggest risk is the weather. Uncertain returns, uncertain yields. Will they be able to get, enough yield to make up for all the costs that went into growing those crops?
Exactly. What is 2 questions left? What is essential reading for you?
Essential reading. Mike Mann, who's a friend of mine, and he's a climate scientist and basically popularized the whole hockey stick, which got him, in a lot of, I wouldn't say trouble, but he bore the brunt of climate denial for the past 20, 30 years. And he published a new book called The New Climate War. And I think that is essential reading for anybody who is interested in this topic. And I think we should all be interested in this topic because we're going to be living it. And our kids and grandkids are going to be living it. So I think that would be really at the top of my list for people who want to understand why this has become such a contentious political issue right now. Michael Mann has been a pioneer, and so that would be at the top of my list.
Perfect. And the last question, and this one came, I was talking through with my family as to what we should do with the podcast, and I wanted to do these questions at the end, and my 10-year-old, her question was, if you were a plant, what plant would you be? And I loved the question, so you get this one.
I think it would be a rose, complete with all the thorns.
A little thorny?
A little thorny, because I think that's that's human nature, right? I mean, good and bad bundled into, one human being. We're all capable of doing enormous good. To me, and I love them all, but I think there's nothing more breathtaking than roses blooming, and it kind of exemplifies the short nature too of not only plant life but also our time on this planet. And I think this time on the planet is a gift, and I also think it's a test. What do we do with our lives, and how do we help those around us? And how do we take care of the only home we have? I think we are called to be stewards, regardless of your faith. Even if you have zero faith, I think we are called to be stewards. And what can we do to make things better? I just hope more people become part of the conversation and step up. It's not a solo, it's a chorus, and we all have a part to play.
Perfect. Well, Paul Douglas, thank you so much for being with us today. I think that's a perfect place to end our conversation about climate change and how it's going to affect gardening in the state of Minnesota here. So thank you so much for your just generosity with your time and sharing what you know with all of our listeners. I really, really appreciate it. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best place to do that?
You can go to my website, pauldouglasweather.com, and reach out that way. You can also call into WCCO and, leave a message or send me a text. So any number of ways. Questions, comments, threats, cheerfully accepted, Brad.
Perfect. Good. And I also want to recommend following you on Twitter as well. You share a lot of really great information on Twitter, and it's a fun follow for anybody. And that's
it's at P. Douglas Weather, at P. Douglas Weather.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for being with us today, and have a great rest of your Labor Day weekend.
Brad, I appreciate everything you're doing. Good luck with the podcast, and take care of yourself.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Brad.
See what I mean? Paul Douglas, the Rose, is absolutely a wonderful wealth of knowledge and information about gardening and climate change and what we throughout the state of Minnesota and the upper Midwest can expect to be happening as we go into the future, and how our past experiences don't necessarily show where we're going in the future. And so working on adaptability and making sure that we are able to grow and change and learn new things as we are experiencing climate change now and into the future is critical. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you made it this far, I love you so much. You can please subscribe to the podcast. We have 3 episodes that are out today if you're listening to this right away. The first episode is this with Paul Douglas. The second episode is with State Representative Kelly Morrison, and we talk about the Lawns to Legumes program that the state of Minnesota has, that you are able to plant more pollinators in your garden and get a lot of work done that way. So it's a really wonderful episode as well. And the third episode is about the dreaded jumping worm that is just spreading throughout Minnesota. Currently, it's spreading through the metro and southeast Minnesota, but will shortly be headed for other areas of the state. So make sure that you know about that and where things are going. So all of the links and information can be found from this episode, and all the things that Paul talked about can be found at minnesotagardening.com/1. And I hope you enjoy the next episodes.